Hello there, this is Fiona, host and main GM for What Am I Rolling, a twice-monthly RPG one-shot podcast. This is a bonus Q&A episode to tide us over to the next one-shot, and it is indeed a very special Q&A. As this week I had the absolute pleasure of interviewing podcaster, game designer and cultural consultant Daniel Kwan about his upcoming game, Wandering Blades, a lethal melodrama. Wandering Blades is a role-playing game of violent martial art melodrama for 2 to 5 players. In this game, players take on the roles of highly skilled martial artists who wander the lands seeking to redress wrongs, help the downtrodden, and free the innocent from oppressive forces. Using a streamlined system inspired by old-school Renaissance products, Wandering Blades enables dynamic and lethal combat while empowering players to tell heroic and melodramatic stories inspired by Chinese wuxia media, Hong Kong action cinema, Japanese anime, and of course, action video games. It was an absolute delight to interview Daniel about Wandering Blades and his overall approach to game design and facilitating games for different audiences. I really love the art that's been made for Wandering Blades. I think it's incredible. A massive shout out to illustrators Leia Ham and Limley Wei for just some beautiful stuff. As someone who doesn't know very much about wuxia movies, thanks to Daniel and his passion for them, I've got some of them on my list now, which I'm going to be checking out. The Kickstarter for Wandering Blades is running from early May to June, and I highly recommend you go and check it out. There's also a free quick start available on Daniel's itch.io page. I'll put a link to that, to the Kickstarter, and to Daniel's other work and all the relevant stuff in this episode's show notes. I'm just going to start off really nice and simply. I would love for you to introduce yourself to our wonderful audience. Who are you and what do you do, my friend?
Yeah, hi there. I'm Daniel Kwan. I am a game designer, cultural consultant, podcaster. I have been playing tabletop RPGs for over 2 decades, and I've been working in the industry as a designer / podcaster for 8 years now.
Ah, amazing. And it's wonderful to have you on, Daniel, again, as a one-shot sort of collaborator. Yes. All these shows going together. It's like, woohoo! So delighted to have you on.
Yeah, I realize that the nature of our show makes it difficult to collaborate with everyone because I co-host Asians Represent, so we can really only have Asian people on the show. So I always feel bad when we can't do a lot of these collabs, but I'm always able to go on other shows. So want to make sure that I reciprocate by, like signal boosting and all of that.
And so we always start with my usual go-to question of like, what is your origin story? How did you get into this weird and wonderful world of TTRPGs?
Museums and summer camp, actually. So I got started playing TTRPGs when I was a youngster. My mom enrolled my brother and I in summer camp at a local museum here in Toronto called the Royal Ontario Museum. It's actually Canada's largest natural and cultural history museum. And they ran a summer, they have like a whole series of summer programming for kids and teens. And my mom signed my brother and I up for Dungeons and Dragons camp, not knowing what this was. Like my parents never played it. It took them until the pandemic to play D&D for the first time.
No way. So they just signed you guys up without just like, we'll just get them out of the house. Wow.
Yeah, we got to occupy them with something, and it's at the museum. We love the museum. Must be good.
Amazing.
And yeah, I ended up being in this program, and the instructor was like this local artist. He was wonderful. His name was Anthony Harrison. And I got into D&D that way. So I actually got to learn how to play D&D, and I got to play D&D at a museum surrounded by artifacts. Like we got to literally play in the galleries, like sitting on the floor next to the suits of armor and playing D&D. And then, of course, having lessons and meeting curators and all sorts of cool stuff. And that got me into Dungeons and Dragons, also got me into archaeology, which I ended up pursuing in, like by my 20s as like a career in academia. And I went to grad school. And it's funny enough, after I got my degree, I ended up teaching that exact Dungeons and Dragons program at the museum.
Whoa.
I was a kid in the program. I volunteered. I was a staff member over the holidays and on weekends and in the summer. And then when I got my degree, I ended up taking over. And I taught that program for 8 years.
Wow.
Yeah. I taught that program for 8 years. I would run it throughout the year on Saturdays. I would do it on holidays and then all throughout the summer. while in grad school. I had the best I had the best part-time job.
I was going to say that is incredible. Like, a lot of my, a lot of this podcast listeners base is in the UK, and there's a whole stuff going on right now where the arts are being cut. People
Oh
like
yeah.
don't go to the museums and stuff. It sounds like again feels way before its time. Like obviously we know of like D&D after school clubs and all that sort of thing, but a summer camp, a whole selection of programs at this amazing museum, and you're like, yeah, bring the kids in. It's all fun. And having that immersiveness of props.
Oh
and
yeah,
stuff, like,
we used to.
so
I
cool.
met one of my future grad school supervisor at the museum when I was 10 in this program.
Wow.
He's online. His name is Dr. Robert Mason, and he's really into like weapons and stuff.
Mhm.
And when I was a kid, I remember we used to go up to the curatorial center, and he would like let us shoot bows and arrows, like real historical, like not artifacts, but historical replicas of like Roman and
right. Like you have to make
Mongolian
that,
bows.
yeah, because you have
Yes,
to say that. You have to say that for insurance purposes. Oh no.
Yes,
Wow.
yes. And English longbows and stuff. We got to hold real swords and stuff, try on armor. And what's super cool is that so I grew up seeing him as like a student, and then I was a staff member, and then when I was a teacher, I got to bring my students to go see him.
Oh,
and then
wow.
during my master's and like when I was doing a PhD, I ended up dropping out of my PhD in my 6th year. So I'm not a doctor. He was actually on my committee and supervising me and my research. So I got to like basically grow up with this archaeologist mentoring me as a scholar, but also kind of nourishing my my love of the game and like history, which then, now that I've left academia and I work in tech during the day, that's my day job. I kind of carry on that sort of like that enthusiasm into my game design work and my podcasting.
Yeah, 100%. It's so interesting, again, having those connections and growing up with people who you consider family, right, at this point.
Yeah, very much. We're still in touch, everything. Yeah.
But also in a time where, you weren't connected necessarily by technology. We didn't have 24-hour internet or data or anything like that. So it's just that I remember a study years and years ago is that you make your best friends in primary school just because of the fact that you're sat next to each other for
proximity.
Yeah, 800 hours or something like that. So the fact that, again, you're doing something you enjoy, don't get me wrong, but just like I feel it's so rare to do that these days. It's obviously different ways of making friendships and stuff online and stuff like that, but the fact that it feels such a special experience that
it was super special. He's honestly probably one of the most influential people in my like professional and like life trajectory. Like he was just like this bearded British guy with tattoos, and he loved weapons. And even when I was a grad student and I had a lab up there in the curatorial center where he worked, I would just go to his office and we would just like talk about like world building, and we'd talk about weapons and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It was a super cool guy. It's like unreal. It sounds like it's something from a movie.
It feels like an NPC that you put in, and everyone's like, "Oh, we want to go visit that NPC. We want to play with the longbows." Which I have the briefest at an archery taster years ago. They're huge. I'm like nearly 6 foot, so I can imagine as like a small preteen, you're just there with this massive bow in a huge gallery. I can just visualize that now. It's just
it was super cool and like hugely influential on me. And yeah, that's how I got started playing RPGs. I would say it's a very unique pathway into like podcasting and game design.
Definitely, it's unusual, but I'm sorry. I'm excited for you, which I know sounds really
I
weird.
appreciate that. Yeah, no, I get it.
So then, like you said, so you started off in this program, and your life, this path, obviously, it's shaped who you are now. But just to go back, like you went back and you became the head of this program, running and facilitating games, presumably D&D, but
D&D, Pathfinder, and then we later branched off into indie RPGs and stuff like that too.
Is this a subject I don't know much about? Obviously, facilitating for younger audiences, younger adults. I guess I know it's not the topic of what we're talking about today necessarily, but
no, it's okay.
For you, what was that like? Obviously, going from a position of you are a player, and then obviously becoming the facilitator, and then how do you run games for a younger audience? And encourage them to be creative, I guess. Again, I'm just curious what's your mindset, your philosophy about that?
Yeah, I had a wonderful team of staff to help me. Like I had a class of 30, and I had enough staff and volunteers to have a GM for like every 4 to 5 kids.
Oh, beautiful.
And we had like interconnected stories. We had like a shared world. Like a big thing is investment, right? A part of the educational component of it was world building together, going into the galleries and me delivering lessons,
Mm.
but then them trying to apply that to our shared world that, of course, all of our stories take place in. And so when they have that sort of like ownership, they really feel more engaged and of course like want to return, right?
Mm.
Um, and so that was one thing that really helped, having that like ownership.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing was just like kind of giving control. I think when, if you're playing tabletop RPGs with like other adults, there's this sense that like the GM is also a player,
Yes.
and the players are responsible for not only kind of like trying to go along with what the GM is suggesting, but the GM is also responsible for like trying to incorporate what the players want to do, because it is a shared narrative.
Mm-hmm.
But the dynamic is very different when, these are youngsters and their parents are paying the museum.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so we have to give them a little bit more control while at the same time teaching them to respect others, because, they're coming in and they know other kids in the program, and they all got to like get to know each other over like the years that they were with me, because it was 11 to 14. So they'd have 4 years with me.
Right, right, right.
But at the same time, they have to be able to navigate the uncertainty of telling a story with someone they've never met before,
Mm.
responding to what another kid is saying. And so key to making sure that was successful was like giving them the space to do it, while
Mm-hmm.
also being upfront about like what we're here for. Like, what are our ground rules? It's more than just playing a game. It's
Yeah.
like regulating ourselves. It's making sure that, we are respecting the needs of others, but also the boundaries of other people as well. And sometimes it works better than others, but we learn from that, right?
Mm.
And being willing to maybe like shift a player around to another group where they might fit better, or
Mm.
identifying these things at the very start so that we won't have to, or
Mm.
making sure that the GMs are well trained or paired well with the kids. It is like really, really important.
Yeah, 100%, that being able to accommodate everyone's needs and so that everyone has a good experience, GMs,
Hmm.
players. Yeah, and again, what you're saying, these kinds of programs are so important for nurturing young minds and allowing that creativity. Again, I know I sort of joked about like arts funds being cut in the UK and stuff, but so much as I think, thank God, in the last 10 years, maybe a little bit more, that we've had actual players online. So people are encouraged to see this. Because I think before, again, there's that little bit of shame about it. It's not seen as a worthy endeavor, like arts,
Yeah.
even though they were so vital in stuff like the pandemic and stuff, but people were like, oh, we need something that's concrete and shows success. And obviously success in capitalism equals financial. And so
Of course. What's the return on investment?
yeah, exactly. So it's just so nice to hear you talk about that, and obviously you're passionate about it. About like, here are all the life transferable skills you get from it, and it's such a special experience. I don't think we had like I'm not sure if there's a Canadian equivalent, but like Girl Scouts, Girl Guides, brownies we had where
Yeah, we have that.
yeah, so I had that, but it was like, we do a task together and get a badge. It's that sort of like,
Yeah.
we get these things. Whereas it wasn't necessarily creating a story together. That's like an activity. So I like the idea of, again, a program where you meet friends and stuff and you develop and create stories together that are so meaningful and so unique to that sort of thing. I mean, it's the same as adults, but like focusing it so young and teaching, about respecting other people's boundaries, but also yourself, and learning what you like and who you want to be as a person. And that's okay
Yeah.
if you don't fit right now. You will, and you'll find your own way to it. Just, yeah, really nice.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I feel like I got to change a lot of parents' minds as well, because a lot of people,
Yeah.
think that D&D is a game, but really, like, D&D and other tabletop RPGs are just like experiences for collaborative problem solving, right?
Hmm.
Because it draws on like everyone's ability to sort of like communicate, reason, connect with others, learn from failure.
Hmm.
But they're also like great tools for informal learning, where people can work on their math, history, science, art, like
Mm.
literacy, communication, like self-reflection, one's ability to advocate for oneself, and even like resiliency, like I said earlier, like dealing with failure.
Mm.
Like tabletop RPGs are just like so perfect for informal learning,
Mm.
like absolutely perfect for them. And the museum obviously saw the return on that investment in paying myself and my staff, because there was return patronage. We were
Yeah.
the most popular program at the museum's, like the entire time I was there. It would sell out all the time. There would always be a
Mm.
wait list.
Yeah.
It was a lot.
Yeah, no, and I can imagine. Yeah, because I know people always semi-joke that the RPG games are therapeutic, not therapy, but also it's in that same sort of vein. It's like they're also a cult because we go, guys, you have to play this game because it's changed
Oh,
my
yeah.
life. And so I like how you put it as that sort of thing. Like once you're in, you've experienced
get it.
you get it, and you want other people to have that.
I had that with some friends actually, like 2 weeks ago.
Oh yeah.
You always have like different circles of friends. You have your your tabletop RPG friends. You have your like
Magic the Gathering friends. Yeah,
Magic the
friends.
Gathering friends, right? Yeah. I have my martial arts friends on my martial arts days, and we've been friends for like 15 years, and we still talk. We see each other all the time.
Nice.
We're all very different people at very different points in our lives, but we all have that bond of like we learned about violence together, right? Because that's what it is.
Yes,
and one of my friends has gotten really into D&D and like didn't know about my work or anything because I don't really talk about it with.
Right? Why would
them.
you? Why would you? Yeah.
Why would I? It's not like I'm hiding it, but like was like, you know what? Their birthday was coming, and they're like, "Hey, do you want to can you run a game for everyone?" And so I did that, and it was crazy because it was like for 7 people, which is like a lot.
Oh no!
7 people who have never played before. Ooh. And it was so much fun. Yeah. And everybody was just like, when are we going to do this again? And one of my buddies who I thought would never play, he came like 30 minutes early because he was so nervous. And I came early too. And he asked me, and he was like, "Hey, how do we win?" Because he's like, "I'm really worried about screwing up for everyone else." And I was like, well, here's the thing. Like, just playing means you've won. And it doesn't actually matter. Yeah. And he was like, "Oh, are you sure?" I'm like, 100%. I'm not fucking with you or anything. And he got so into it. And it was wonderful. I think I hope that everybody gets the opportunity to introduce their friends or family to tabletop RPGs.
Oh, just that look in their eyes as they go, "Oh," and you go, "Yes, you've done it." That sort of got him. Yeah.
Get it? Yeah, 100%.
I remember that specific moment for me was I was like a Grant Howat one shot and recorded it for the podcast, and it'd gone really well. But the person I'd printed out the sheets that everyone can have it, and they took the sheet afterwards and went, "Can I take this home?
Can I keep this?" Yeah,
and I was like, "Yeah," because I'm meeting my family tomorrow, and I want to play this game with them, and I was like,
"Oh, that's cool."
Yes, because obviously I was like, "Of course," because I was
that's super cool.
Yeah, and it just, it's that sort of thing where it's Grant Howat one shot, so it's super silly, super fun. It's not like emotional fit, but they were like, I want this again. I want that feeling again, and I want to run it so I can get that feeling from other people. So again, a little bit of a pyramid scheme, perhaps in emotion, or a little bit cult.
In my opinion, I think the best tabletop RPGs are the ones that just get people to play and introduce other people.
100%.
Play whatever you want to play as long as you're not doing harm to other people. And an added benefit of really having a good game or a good gaming experience is being able to tell other people and get them to want that too.
Yeah, 100%. Well, let's move away from that amazing topic. I know it sounds like we could talk about this all the time.
We could. It's up to you. I don't mind.
No. I want to talk about actually harming people in a TTRPG sense. Let's talk about Wandering Blades then. So for people who haven't been following your work or it's just their first time sort of hearing your voice on the podcast, could you let people know what is Wandering Blades and how does it stand out from other RPGs that are out here currently?
Yeah, so Wandering Blades is my newest game. It is it's obviously a tabletop RPG about violent martial arts melodrama inspired by Chinese wuxia media and Hong Kong action cinema. The kind of new thing it brings to the industry is that it's kind of a mix of sort of like OSR design tradition, story game, but also like dynamic and tactical combat all in one. One person who I was talking to about it kind of described my game as kind of like a martial arts movie RPG generator.
Amazing. I love that. That's a great quote.
Yeah, it's a great quote, and it's gonna go on the Kickstarter.
Yeah, absolutely. You're pulling all those quotes for it. So you've got the quick start out now, and yes. I wanted to ask a couple of questions around that. But I think first of all, I do want to sort of commend your illustrators for some incredible, beautiful art.
Yes.
I've never seen anything quite like that. This is sort of a genre that's very, very new to me, and so just evocative. Yeah, well, so I just wanted to, again, if you could describe for the audience who might not be able to see it and stuff like that, but what kind of artwork do we see? And I guess what was the sort of inspiration, like design notes that you gave to your wonderful illustrators?
Yeah, I made like a mood board for my so I had I made a whole mood board for them. So I had two illustrators. The first one did the cover. Her name's
Mm,
Leah Ham, and the other one, her name is Lim Li Wei, who is doing all of the internal illustrations. So the cover illustration was actually inspired by a movie by one of my favorite directors of all time, John Woo.
hmm
A lot of people know John Woo for like his American films, like he did like Face Off or like Mission Impossible 2. A lot of people know him for like his Hong Kong movies, like Hard Boiled or like The Killer. But he actually in 1979 came out with a movie called Last Hurrah for Chivalry. It's a
Mm.
wuxia movie. And the cover for Wandering Blades is a direct homage to the Criterion Blu-ray of that
Oh,
film.
cool.
And the interior art is kind of inspired by a whole bunch of different pieces of martial arts and wuxia media that inspired like the game. And so
hmm
all of the art that folks will see in the game is inspired by like wuxia media. And so for folks who don't know, wuxia is like a genre of Chinese fiction that focuses on the adventures of martial artists. Wuxia can kind of take place in like different settings. It's typically like historical China,
Mm.
um, but primary sort of story elements are heroes who kind of exist outside of the aristocratic or military class and kind of wandering around ancient China
hmm
with their own personal codes and literally fighting for righteousness and avenging injustice. And so I was deeply inspired by movies from the 1960s and 70s.
hmm
And I really wanted to replicate the gritty martial arts and sort of dramatic character interactions of those films on a tabletop.
hmm
But I wanted to design a game that would mechanically empower people to engage in like beautiful violence.
Mm. Yeah, that's what it
And
is,
so
isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, so that's what it's all about. And so I kind of had like a couple of guiding principles behind the game itself.
Yeah.
I wanted a game where danger was everywhere. So I wanted to create a system and a structure for a world full of danger
hmm
because I wanted player mistakes to have deadly consequences.
hmm
I also wanted to kind of incorporate a lot of the old school Renaissance principles of open-ended gameplay, challenging gameplay, a structure that's supportive of emergent narratives.
Mm.
I wanted a toolbox experience. I wanted the rules to be open for player interpretation and ingenuity and
Mm.
expansion. And then lastly, I really wanted, like I said, that beautiful, gorgeous violence. I wanted combat to feel stylish, fast, compelling, dangerous,
Mm.
but not because of the narrative or role playing chops of the players, but also the system, because
hmm
not everybody has those or they're just getting started. And so
hmm
I had this idea called time to violence. So in like sales, there's a concept of time to value, like how fast can a customer or prospect see value in what you're selling them.
Ah.
So in my mind, I wanted time to violence. It was how fast can the players be enabled to dive into the action and hone their
Ooh,
skills.
that's awesome.
And so that's Watery Blades in a nutshell. That's kind of what it brings. It's kind of got I've designed and worked on and played a lot of story games, and I've worked on and designed a lot of sort of like old school inspired content. And I wanted to marry the two, but with a combat system that was dangerous, but also like very, very like tactical and dynamic.
I've been looking at through the devlog that you've been putting up on your
Oh, did
itch.
you watch the little like breakdowns of all the? Yeah,
That's exactly what I was going to mention because I think shows a testament to you and your game designing thing, but like the idea that you could take a piece of media and then try and break it down and try and see if the game mechanics in this game could support it. So obviously, I know you do Ghost of Tsushima, and like obviously I know that's a Japanese
yeah, but the
folklore game.
combat
Combat
was
very
deeply
much
inspiring.
so, exactly, and with anime and all that sort of thing. And so that was again, I know I've seen other people sort of do that and talk about inspirations, but the fact that you break it down literally frame by frame and like, oh,
Yes.
you do this, and it's great. So I'd highly recommend people to go and check that out because it just shows that inner working that you're really focusing on that sort of like, how can the mechanics support what we are telling and making it, like you said, that stylish cinematic gameplay.
Like I've purchased games in the past where they were like, oh, inspired by this, and I'm like, oh, well, it's inspired by this in like the aesthetic, but not in
Yes.
how it in execution, right? Not in
Mm-hmm.
execution. And so when I loved the combat of Ghost of Tsushima,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh, this is what I like. This is in video game format, the back and forth that you see in the classic wuxia movies,
Mm-hmm.
like the parrying, the counterattacking, the dodging, the stances, the drama. And so one of the new things I've done, like I've worked on over 40 tabletop RPGs, and this is the first time I've ever done it.
Mm-hmm.
I sat down and was like, if I'm going to say that this inspired my
Yeah.
game, I want to make sure that players can go or tables can go and be like, we're going to consume this media and try to replicate it ourselves. And I want
100%.
them to be able to do that successfully. And so, yeah, I would watch like fight scenes or like video game, like gameplay of combat, and I would break it down, like you said, like frame by frame to see if my system would work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it does.
Yeah, you're like, yes, I did it.
Yeah, it was as a designer, it was very validating to
I
see
can
that, because it
imagine.
was just like, oh my God, like I'm actually following through with a promise.
The other thing I know you sort of speak about in some other interviews I was reading was that you wanted to have classes, a limited number of classes, because you don't want to be
Mhm.
overrun with all the millions of various variations. But they were, whatever the class was, it was broad enough to sort of enhance or sort of take those tropes on that you see in these sort of movies. And
Yeah.
as far as I'm aware, because I've only had access to the quick start, there's two classes that we've got just now. So there's the wuxia and
The
the
Yosha,
oh,
yeah.
Yosha, thank you.
That's
So
okay.
yeah, I gotta get these right. So the
Well, you know
Yosha,
what? If people don't pronounce it right, that's okay, because that means that they learned it from reading.
so the Yoshia and the Outlaw, and then I believe so. The next one that's coming out, the one that you're sort of playtesting just now, is the Scholar. But was this under a different name at some point, like the Detective, or was that something else?
Yeah. So there's the Yosha, the Outlaw are both the classes that are in the quick start,
Hmm.
and then the core rulebook has those plus the Scholar class.
Hmm.
And the Scholar class, when you create your character, you essentially pick a vocation, and there are two
Right.
vocations: the detective and the physician.
Ah, yes, yes.
So
Because
you're either like a scholar detective or a scholar physician.
I see. Because yeah, because both of the classes that we have in the quick start, they are. It's very interesting because they are slightly differently mechanically in a sense. Like
Hmm.
you got the outlaw, you have the sort of you pick a sort of like a general sort of expertise area, and then you get points into that. You get more and more trained. Whereas the Yoshia, you have the sex and the different sort of
Yeah.
schools and classes. And it just for me, it was like, oh, you've obviously again really honed in those sort of different archetypes. So yeah, of course, it makes total sense that you'd have two sort of different branches for the scholar, rather than again having lots of little sort of like very specialized. You play
Hmm.
this class and that's it.
It was intentional because early on, I made a decision on how long I wanted people to play the game or play a
Mm,
character. Right, Wandering Blades is not designed for you to play it indefinitely like other tabletop RPGs like D&D or
mm,
Pathfinder. Right,
hmm.
um, there are only 5 levels for each class, because
Ah,
the I want to reinforce the fact that this is meant to emulate like short TV series or films,
hmm,
but also because the world is dangerous and that characters can actually die. Having this like high level ceiling doesn't make sense,
hmm.
and so having only 5 levels kind of reinforces the intended experience of rolling up a new character, telling a different story, and having your old character kind of live in the world that you're establishing. Or if your character dies, it doesn't feel like you're as far behind as everyone else.
Mm,
On top of that, like because every class has a lot of sort of variety, I want to give opportunities for people to play lots of different characters. Like the
yeah.
Yosha has, a signature weapon, which
Mm,
changes your damage. They have an alter ego, and then they pick a martial arts sect. And each martial arts sect has a different feel in combat.
yeah.
There are some that are all about mobility. There are some about like taking hits and being like a tank. There's
Hmm.
some about like being unhittable, but being in the middle of the melee. And so you can really I've had 5 players all pick the same class, but all play very differently.
Oh, that's so cool.
And then the outlaw, you could have an assassin, you can be a bandit, but you could
Hmm.
also just be a black market merchant and not have any combat skills.
Hmm.
The detective and then the physician are very specialized roles. but they all come from one class.
Yes. In the interview that I saw you do, you had talked at the time of this detective being fully role play. Now, obviously, I know that was a long time ago, but is that still part of it? Because obviously, this game is focused on that sort of very stylish, intentful violence. I wanted to ask about that. I assume it might have changed.
Yeah, it has changed a little bit. The Yosha is basically the pure combat class. The Outlaw is like the hybrid, and then so is the Scholar. So the detective basically gets a faction affiliation. So in the game, like reputation is really important, just like in the world of wuxia. And so the detective is actually at the start of the game, they get to ally themselves with a particular world, either martial, court, or common, and the reputation is enhanced with them. All right, because you're solving problems, and who are you solving problems for? But then the detective, in addition to having a lot of role play capabilities or literal deductive capabilities, is really good in combat as a supporting character. So the detective can use their intellect to help their allies. The detective is the only class that can ask the GM mechanical details about NPCs.
Oh, cool.
How much health do they have left? Tell me about their martial arts techniques. Very similar to media, where like, oh, I recognize your style.
Oh, cool.
So the detective can do that.
Okay.
The detective can, spend an action to study somebody to overcome their defenses and can hold on to this sort of, I'm calling it calculated precision, and increase their damage and inflict conditions upon people. The physician can transfer chi to people, but they can also attack meridian points. The physician can be very, very strong in combat.
I can imagine. Yeah, that's sort of like just moving chi points around. I guess, do you, from your play testing and stuff, obviously you said like you've had groups that have all played the same class or done different. Is there one that has struck a chord as a favorite, or is it just been interesting to see people trying different things? I guess anything that stands out to you.
I like them all.
Yes.
I like them all because I see all of the different characters from media that inspired each one.
Oh, cool.
Like I'm like, oh, if I want to play this, I know I can do it with this one. And I was actually talking to one of the freelancers who's going to be working on one of the stretch goals. And we were talking about like, well, I think it'd be really neat to add in other class options. We were talking about Kalari Payatu. It's like a South Asian martial arts. And it's actually believed to be the original martial art that inspired like Kung Fu and everything. And so we were like, well, what if we wrote this like South Asian martial art, and we made it like we had a whole selection of weapons, and we could treat it like a sect and have its own techniques. And so you could play a Yosha, like a wandering knight errant, but you could be from India.
Oh, very cool.
Because there is that historical connection between India and China, like with Buddhism and everything. And so part of our stretch goals are going to be to like kind of like flesh out what's possible. There are actually going to be 3 new classes in our first stretch goal. Yeah, one of them is going to be like kind of, it's not going to be, I guess, 2.5. One is going to be like class options for the Yosha, but inspired by South Asia. Another, we're going to try to do a class that's inspired by sort of the warriors of Okinawa, like southern Japan, and their sort of resistance against sort of like the majority, right? Their historical like clashes. And then another is actually based on a wuxia romance story from like the Tang Dynasty called Kunlun Nu. And it's about it's a story about a South Asian slave who saves his master's like lover from like an awful and corrupt harem, like to become a part of the emperor's court. But we were like, oh, this would be I was talking to this other freelancer, and we felt like this would be a really great way of like representing marginalized people within this game, but also in a way that is also true to the wuxia genre as well. And then we've got some more outlandish stuff.
Yeah. I was going to say, don't reveal all the secrets, because I appreciate you might not be able to reveal them. But I'm so excited as a result. Like, again, it's just the possibilities.
I'll reveal one more since you've read the quick start.
Go for it.
Are you a fan of anime?
I dabble a little bit in pieces. The last thing I watched was like Demon Slayer ages ago, but I have dabbled.
This is perfect then. So, so like Demon Slayer, they've all got their own breathing techniques and styles.
Yeah.
Demon Slayer was actually one of the combat from Demon Slayer was a huge inspiration because like in martial arts movies, they're always talking about their different techniques and stuff. That's just
Mm.
like Demon Slayer. And I was recently in Japan, and my partner and I actually got to go to this Demon Slayer exhibition.
Oh, sweet.
And it was super cool. But I had this thought, and I was like, oh my god, Wandering Blades is just a Demon Slayer tabletop RPG.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and the combat and the Yosha are is just 100%. You could just take that and make a knockoff Demon Slayer RPG without any mechanical changes. And so I'm working with a freelancer, and we're gonna, as a stretch goal, there's gonna be a class. I don't know what we're gonna call it yet, but
No.
the intent is for it to be a knockoff Demon Slayer. We're gonna call it like Devil Killer or something.
Yeah. Something like not,
Yeah.
not copyright. Well, I'm in already. I mean,
Yeah.
I was in already, but I'm like, oh my god, that would be Because
I'm gonna be testing this concept at an anime con in May at Anime North. They asked me if I want to do a live show, and I was like, "What if I did Demon Slayer live?"
My co-host on a different podcast, he ran basically Morkborg, but as Demon Slayer. And he advertised it out, and I that's how I got into it and watched it. And I was like, oh, it'd be nice to it. But yeah, we went to like a Comic-Con. We were packed out of Demon Slayer fans. I was like, oh, I'd hope I don't fuck this up, because like I've watched it. I know a little bit about it, but yeah, it was so much fun. And there's just something about that, like that genre. Again, all the big fights and stuff like that. Again, I can absolutely see Wandering Blades.
Yeah, but like Wandering Blades mechanically lets you do what you see in Demon Slayer: the parrying, the back and forth, the techniques, the tension. I played a game on a podcast called Party of One, and the combat encounter we played out, it was a one-on-one, so it was one player, the host and me, and my boss character had one wound left, and his character had one wound left, and it was a combat where it was down to like whoever lands the next blow basically kills the other person, and his character had a condition called bleed, so he would lose 1 HP. And as a part of the story, he was actually saving this doctor who was being sent out for execution for helping like the poor. And he ended up having this back and forth, this clash of swords with the boss and killing the boss, but then bleeding out. And so our story ended with him collapsing after killing the boss, but saving the doctor. And we kind of talked about what would happen in the story and how, the doctor would save him. And then he had lost a hand in the fight, because that can happen in the game. And now he became this one-handed swordsman who is now traveling with this doctor to go save his family from execution in the capital as like a follow-up. But it was so cool because we were vibing, but like mechanically, everything was working out exactly like a movie.
It just gives you that, I think you talk about it, this intensive sort of narration that people feel like you can go above the table and go, what if it's like this? Because I think sometimes, players, there's lots of different play styles, but people don't like being strategic or planning ahead necessarily, because they don't, what if it all goes wrong? But obviously here,
that's a part of the fun, though, adapting to when it goes wrong.
Absolutely. But I guess here, because obviously, as you said, everything is dangerous. Going into a fight, you could die. But learning that, hey, we're being beaten right now, we need to retreat. Like, I think, but like being able to go like, well, I can go in. If you two hold the minions back, and I can do this killing, and actually,
what if we go and focus all of our energy on killing the leader, and we can break their morale, which is a mechanic in the game.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Or like, because combat is dangerous, and players are more dangerous than enemies because of their chi, but chi isn't restored very easily.
No.
And so you have to be choosy about when you actually want to fight. And so even though this is a game about combat, you have to actually be smart about whether or not you want to fight. And this reinforces that tension that kind of emerges through the role play.
As we were sort of talking about before that, I did go, no, this is so cool. We've made such an amazing story. I want to come back again. I think you've absolutely nailed this, obviously, with Wandering Blades, from that sort of like player first philosophy. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I've had like play tests where the combat was one round, because the players, they understood the mechanics, and they're like, we can't have this fight drag out, because the longer it drags out, the worse shape we're going to be in. And what if we get into another fight? We have to just end this.
We have to go for it.
We have to just do it. And they just go for broke, and they end the fight without even me being able to attack. And it's so cool to see, because they're working off of one another. Because there isn't like an initiative order. It's always players first. They get to basically choose how they work together and synergize their abilities. They have to bait out like parrying or reactions from me, and I have to think about it. And it becomes this like dance where everyone is just engaged in the moment. And it's not like, okay, let me just sit down and wait for my turn so I can roll my attack and then wait again.
Oh, I didn't hit. That's it. Yeah, I'm done.
That's it. Yeah, now I'm going to wait and let the spellcaster do a million things.
Yeah. Oh, it takes ages. Yeah. And as well, I know you've got like, or you were looking at some acrylic standees, which looked super fucking cool, by the way, when you unboxed
I've got one like, I've got them like right here.
They're so good. But I know, like you said, so good. But I know
Thank you.
It's more theatre of the mind, like the zones of where you are. You know, you're right next to them. You're not measuring out necessarily and stuff like that. But I like the fact that you could, again, use all the stuff you have from D&D, but not use like the hex max or anything like that, and use those as standees. And visually,
it's like playing with action figures.
Yes,
it's like playing with toys. That's what I wanted. But also because in wuxia, like fight scenes, people in this media can like they can jump on water. They can like jump to like the second floor of a building. It makes no sense to basically be like, you're limited to a 5-foot reach.
Yeah,
when you're also capable of doing really cool, fantastical things.
Yeah, just having it to be like fast turn, one action and one reaction. And that's it. So you like make this count, or like if you go for a slow turn, you go last, but then you have 2 actions and one. Yeah, it just simplifies everything down that has to make it turns.
And that's at its simplest level. But the thing that I really wanted with Wandering Blades was the more you play it, the better more lethal you become. Because like, well, I could take a fast turn, but I get 1 action and 1 reaction. But what if I use my reaction and 2 chi points to give myself an extra action?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
And people started doing that. And then it forces the GM to also be like, okay, well, I have to think, well, maybe I'll split up I'll have some go fast and some go slow. Or like if I'm the GM, I'll be like, I have no option. I can't go fast. I have to go slow. And they're always going to go before me. So I'm on the back pedal. And it brings in this idea of the tempo of a fight. Like the narrative feeling of having the upper hand at the fight is manifested in how combat and initiative works in this game.
Yeah, just that the ebb of the flow again feels very cinematic, feels very much like the orchestrated combat sequence that you see in these films.
Yeah, or it's like, you know what? I'm not going to parry. I'm not going to spend my reaction. I'm going to take the hit because I want to use my reaction to get an action and hit back even harder.
Right,
it's that decision making.
Yeah,
it makes it so spicy.
It's spicy, but also it's not like I'm going to hide that from you. I'm going to tell you that I'm not going to take it because I'm going to do this.
Yeah, and it's almost like now we're negotiating. It's like, well, maybe I'll do this or maybe I'll do that, but that's that point in the fight where you're just like, who's going to hit first? Like, what are you going to do?
Yeah,
it's the feinting.
The feinting until someone goes, and it's just that. I love devised theatre in that sense, where we just talk things through, and no one's like, roll for it. Like we know where we want to go, and then like you said, you've done this. Well, I will spend some of my resources. But as you said, the longer this fight goes on, the more you're going to drain yourself, and you're more desperate it's going to be. So you need to be thinking ahead and stuff like that, and thinking about your characters and like you said, this is melodrama. Heightened emotions and stuff like that. So I think there was something you said in one of your interviews. It's like, you don't want people to be looking at their character sheets for the answer. You want it in the world. No, I want them
to think outside of their character sheet. Exactly.
Which it's something I absolutely love. And like, I think that comes in with the talking things. Like, okay, you're going to hit me. No, I'm not going to I want to talk to you. I want to do something that's not on the, and I think that's so empowering, because like the amount of times you see, again, maybe some new role players or people who are nervous to play have the sheet and they're looking for the answer. And you're like, what's your gut right now? And then we can roleplay, we can talk together, and then the more you can let go of that sheet and then just use the rules and break them or bend them to what you want. But I just something about that, I was like, it's not in the character sheet.
That's why there are no skills in the game. You just have your attributes, and the outlaw just happens to be better at certain things.
Yes.
Right? Because I don't want to limit what is possible. Like, what can I do with these 4 attributes and the list of the items I'm carrying? Let's be creative.
You don't want to be like always the person, I'm the fast talker, or I'm the one with the lockpick, so I always do this role. He's like, no, I could be anyone.
Can I kick down the door, or can I talk my way through it, or could we just leap up to the second floor window?
So obviously, I know this has been in development for a long time. I'm going to ask you like a 2-part, possibly a hard question to answer. So feel free to be like,
okay,
what the fuck are you asking? So I know obviously you've done a lot of creating games and stuff like that. I guess for you and your process, what is the most sort of challenging obstacle that you've come across when writing games and developing them? And how have you managed to overcome it? It could be something very general. It could be something very specific. Obviously, you don't have to name names if it's a certain person that you're like, I can't bother to work with them. But like, is there a challenge that you come across a lot that you're like, this is part of the game design, I have to face it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And I think just from having this experience, I think there are always going to be folks who might have different expectations of what the game is.
100%.
Right. There are some folks when I initially released it who are asking, well, are there rules for this? What about this? What about this? And I'm like, I didn't want to have rules for that because I don't want to limit how it's possible, how it's done, and kind of teaching people that and making sure that that's kind of like worked into the rule book.
Mm.
And so I think for me, I think one of the challenges was seeing how people kind of who might have only played D&D interpreted these rules and the sort of the openness of them.
Mm.
And then at the same time, I think another challenge is making sure that people feel, I guess, empowered to play this, because there are people who are like really into like martial arts and stuff, but then there are folks who are really scared of like, I said this on another podcast, doing a racism, like being racist.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's like, this is a game that is explicitly Chinese coded.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I was scared of is people being scared to even buy or play this game because they are afraid of, for lack of a better word, like being canceled by their friends. And so what I wanted to do was make sure that like put a lot more support into the game in helping this, like writing best practices. There's a whole section in the book that just says rulings, not rules. Like make rulings to encourage more engagement with the fiction. That's what the game says. Or like ensure that every fight is compelling and cinematic. Make sure that problems can be solved by either cunning or martial skill, not just one. And then there is a whole section on wuxia and like what are the different kinds of common themes. What does chivalric martial arts storytelling look like? And then there's a really long section on Chinese names. So if you're not a Chinese speaker, don't worry. There is like a literal whole section that talks about like here's a table for coming up with a name. Here are common family names. Or hey, in Chinese culture, people have like nicknames, and it's okay to not have like a Chinese sounding name, and you could just have a nickname. And I've listed out a couple of movies. Like one of the most influential wuxia movies of all time, and I highly recommend everyone watch it, is called Come Drink With Me. It came out in 1966, and it's incredible. It still holds up extremely well. But the main character, she's just called Golden Swallow.
Yeah.
And the other guy is called Drunken Cat. Or like there's a movie called The One-Armed Swordsman, and one of the characters is called Long-Armed Devil. Right? Or in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, one of the characters is called Dark Cloud. And this is all in line with the genre itself.
Yeah, you want to be celebrating cultures and not, again, that the small minority of people who are like using it for malicious means. Like I know we've seen
people
this.
Are always going to do that.
They're always going to do
people
that.
Are always going to do that.
Again, I love the fact through playtesting and obviously your own experiences, you've gone right. Well, here's the way we're going to make it accessible for you, so you can't fuck up. You know, if you read this and you use the tables and stuff like that, you're all set. You know, and also it's guidelines. It's not you have to do these things. And I think that's so important because then you get to share your passion for a genre that many people might not know about.
Or honestly, if telling a wuxia story scares you, use a different setting. Or like, you know, I don't want to do it in historical China. That's totally okay. There is an incredible movie that inspired like the creation of this game. It came out last year. It's called Twilight of the Warriors, Walled In. And it is a wuxia movie based on a Chinese comic. But it is a martial arts movie with like all the high flying techniques and everything set in the 1980s.
Oh, amazing.
In the Kowloon walled city in Hong Kong. So like the close quarters of the walled city with 80s fashion, but with martial arts style wire fu is just like such a cool blend.
What a cool concept.
Yeah, it's an incredible movie. In my opinion, the best action movie that came out last year. I watch a lot of action movies.
I was going to say, I can imagine you do a lot of research on a lot of action movies.
I watch at least one action movie a week. I have a club with like some of my friends who also contributed to Wandering Blades, and we watch a different movie every week.
And
so
that's so awesome.
When I was working on The Scholar, specifically the detective, we were watching wuxia movies that featured a detective.
Right. To
try to see like, all right, like what would they do? What are the common tropes?
And then the sort of flip side of that question of the sort of the obstacle stuff is like, what's your favorite part about game design? Apart from like obviously watching movies with your friends, that's great.
Yeah,
But,
I would say that's the best part.
but like, is there something about game design that you really look forward to, whether it's writing, playtesting, getting it out there and going like, oh, it's done, hooray! You know, I guess is it. Yeah. What's your sort of favorite part when you comes down to game design?
I think it's different for every game. Like for my first game was called Ross Rifles, and it was a World War One powered by the apocalypse game about being a Canadian soldier in the trenches. It was super specific, which all PBT games should be.
To be, yes.
But my goal with that was I wanted to teach people about the Canadian perspective on the First World War. I wanted to create a tool that, educators could use, because I actually designed that game when I was teaching at the museum to use to teach kids World War One.
Right. Yeah.
And I wanted people to learn about the war, but also learn about the contributions of marginalized groups in Canada to the war, like the Chinese and Japanese and Black Canadians. And so for me, that was one of the best things about that process as a designer. For Wandering Blades, it's on one end, it's the satisfaction of I love the creative process. Like, this is the first game that I designed with a notebook. I know this isn't going to be a video podcast, but
I'm a big fan of the Spy and Family.
Oh yes,
you got on there. So I was like,
when I was doing the cover, I was sketching out what I wanted the cover to look like, and then the cover ended up being like that.
Oh wow. It's almost like you've made your own artifact RPG for yourself there, but the game design. Yeah,
or when I was designing combat, I was like, here's the flow of combat and what I wanted it to look like.
Oh, amazing.
And actually part of one of our later stretch goals is actually I'm going to scan this whole notebook, and then there's going to be an annotated PDF where I talk about every little decision here.
That's
and
great.
How it impacted the game. But yeah, I have 120 pages of handwritten notes that I used to write this game. Which was super cool for me. And so after the game, I have this really cool artifact of what it was.
And also because your writing is readable. I will say that, because my writing is not readable. So
thank you for saying that. I don't think my handwriting is legible.
As long as you can get the general sense out of it. I was always described at school as having spider scrawl, and even then I was like, oh no. So
I even have some of different iterations of the character sheet. So I have a character sheet here from a convention with my notes on it.
Yeah.
And I've taped it into my notebook. But then I go back several pages, and then I've got another character sheet with notes as well from a different convention.
Yeah.
And so it's cool because I get to see how it worked out, and even have a hand-drawn character sheet revision in my notebook. But I love that I have this artifact. But I think the thing that I'm most excited about and happy to see with Wandering Blades is just giving people the opportunity to have really stylish combat on the tabletop. Real simple. It doesn't have to be as meaningful as Ross Rifles, but I just wanted to create a game that was a base that folks could use to tell really violent, melodramatic stories. And I am really excited for this because I can't wait to be done with Wandering Blades.
Yes.
So I can move on to using the system for another thing.
Right, yes. Because I know you spoke about, again, in
Cyberpunk. I want to do a Cyberpunk game.
Cyberpunk. Oh, amazing. Yeah. Oh, yes.
I want to do a game about cyber ninjas fighting demons. I want to just do something really, really out there.
I can't wait for that game as well. But obviously I know Wandering Blades needs to come out first.
Yeah, the Devil May Cry anime just came out, and I was watching it, and I was like, oh my god, this would be so cool with Wandering Blades, because you can do it. Yeah, and I already have notes on how to do guns in Wandering Blades.
There you go. It's all coming together.
Yeah, and it's just I've got to get past this first step as well. And then I can work on it, and hopefully other people like it enough to maybe use that system to tell stories about their own cultures.
And I was going to say, having the physical sort of artifact of you creating an RPG, again, it just goes back to your roots in the museum and stuff. I just see you, it's just going to be something like Ark of the Covenant, and someone's going to steal it at some other point, but it just really fits into your archaeological background. That's all I can see.
You even have some early Wandering Blades, keychains.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to do them for the Kickstarter, but maybe in the future.
Sorry, well, you've got your own special one. That's all that matters. You stick that in the diary.
There's only 3 of them. And the 2 others who have them are in my movie club.
Oh, that's so cute. If somebody, is listening to this conversation and they're like, this sounds amazing, and they're going to come, back the Kickstarter, all that sort of thing, and they're going to run Wandering Blades for the first time, what's your sort of big advice as a facilitator for running a game, for running this particular game, would you say? What your one big bit of advice?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think like go into it with the fullest with the full intent of like collaborating with everybody on the story. You can have an idea in mind on what you want to do, but really take into account the players' ideas. Because again, wuxia is a very character-driven genre of fiction. I said it takes place in like historical or ancient China. But in wuxia media, more often than not, China itself is just kind of like this backdrop for the character drama and the action.
Mm.
It's difficult to tell what dynasty it is or where they are in China. Like Dragon Inn, which is another movie, takes place in just this inn in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so so like I would say go into it with the intent of collaborating on a cool action movie. Think about it that way. The core rulebook will have like a big sandbox adventure inspired by one of like my favorite movies that I watched while working on this Dragon Inn. I'll actually send you right now
please.
An exclusive.
What?
I'll send you. I've only shown this. I guess it's an exclusive to the podcasters.
Yes.
I'll send you a picture. This is a map of the setting. I sent it to you on Discord.
Yes.
Oh
wow.
The lower levels are not shown there, but there isn't a linear adventure in the core rulebook, and it's an adventure location or sandbox. There are prompts and NPCs and factions and details on all the different rooms.
Yes.
And there are suggestions for how you can kind of go about creating a story from the setting, but I want to maximize replayability.
I love how detailed this line drawing you've sent me is.
Oh, yeah.
It's so gorgeous. Oh,
it's
wow.
very nice. I can't wait to see it. It's like fully done.
Well, I enjoyed that. And yeah, I'd encourage everyone who's listened to go check out, obviously, the Kickstarter. Is happening soon. Yeah, I'm going to finish off by saying thank you so much, Daniel, for coming on and letting me just gush about you and your games. I very much appreciate it. Final thing is that where can we find your work? What are the details for the upcoming funding campaign? And yeah, where can we find out more information about Wandering Blades if people want to find out more?
Yeah, so you can find me online at Daniel H. Kwan. I'm mostly on Blue Sky now, but I am on other platforms, but I really only respond on Blue Sky. Daniel H. Kwan, that's Daniel H. Kwan. If you want to back Wandering Blades, it'll be running throughout the month of May, from May 6th to the start of June. You can just head to wanderingblades.com. It'll redirect you to the Kickstarter campaign. You'll be able to download a quick start and everything there. Hopefully we get funded. Fingers crossed we hit all of our stretch goals, because there's some really cool stuff. One of the stretch goals is even more art from the artist.
Oh, yes, please.
And I'm super excited because if we can get more art, that means we can get more standees as well.
Yes, yeah. I was going to say, I just want more of this stuff for me, please.
And I realized actually with the acrylic standees that it was really hard to find Asian miniatures to use if you want an Asian character.
Really?
So I was like, this is like in and of itself like a great product for the market.
100%.
But yeah, you'll find Wandering Blades there. Other places to find me online, I have 2 shows on the One Shot Network. Asians Represent. We brought home the network's 2 Emmy Awards.
Woo!
We won the Emmy Awards for the network. And then I have a new show that I recently launched on the One Shot Network. Thank you, James, for letting me use the network resources for this really silly show. It's called John Who, and it's a podcast all about John Woo, where I watch it with my buddy of mine who's never seen a single John Woo movie. And we're watching the filmography, every single movie, and he's going to watch it for the first time, and we're going to talk about it with a guest. But yeah, I've got Asians Represent, I've got John Who, both on the One Shot Network.
Amazing. And I know you were doing some sort of, not playtest, but you were going through the sort of development blog on your Patreon as well. So yeah, if people wanted to find out more about upcoming developments and stuff like that, should they go to their Patreon?
Oh yeah, I'm so bad at talking about my Patreon.
Don't worry, that's why I'm here just a little bit. But
thank you. No, thank you. So professional. Yeah, I have a Patreon where I was working on Wandering Blades. I have to talk to my publisher about where I should be posting stuff after the Kickstarter.
Sure.
But I do plan on, and this is a true exclusive for this podcast, I do plan on posting progress on follow-up to Wandering Blades starting May, June on my Patreon. That's just patreon.com/Daniel H. Kwan. I share like art drafts, and I'll probably be sharing drafts there too.
Yeah.
Well, it's the campaign. So yeah, if you like my work, head to patreon.com/DanielHKwan. After Wandering Blades, I'll be using it to basically pivot to my next game,
Yeah.
which will be ideally like a weird cyberpunk supernatural action RPG.
I love it. You never stop. You're like, okay, done. Next thing. I know that's like the hustle of life anyway, but I like the fact you're like, maybe I'll have a break.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like I took a break for a while. I'm not freelancing as much.
Sure.
Because I've just really enjoyed like creating my own shit.
It's nice, isn't it?
and it's been fun. And maybe I won't do a big crowdfund for the next thing. Maybe I'll just release it digitally. But I've just loved the process of designing, but also how close it's brought me to a lot of my friends.
Oh, what a wholesome note to end on. Like, oh, thank you so much, Daniel. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on this podcast. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
I'm hoping to do more of these special Q&A bonus episodes in future, including Q&As on the one-shots we've run here at What Am I Rolling? If you have a question or think of an RPG designer you'd like to see interviewed on this podcast, just let us know. Our email address is whatamirollingpodcast@gmail.com. And that's it. Great. See you next time.
Asians Represent is a 2-time Gold Annie Award-winning podcast that celebrates and examines Asian representation in gaming and pop culture. We do this by creating conversation, introducing new perspectives to the broader gaming community, and creating spaces for new voices in the industry. Tune in for interviews with Asian creators from around the world, examinations of Asian media, and stories that will introduce new perspectives into your gaming experiences.